G'day friends, it's Andrew Goodall here from Nature's Image Photography once again with something new on the Panasonic Lumix G9. Before we get started, if you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button to keep in touch with all my future content on the G9 and my whole world of photography. So, this video is about the high resolution mode on the G9. It's something I've always known about, but I've lacked a suitable lens to really try it out. But I've just got my hands on a Leica Panasonic 12 to 60mm, and my first order of business was to finally put high-res mode to the test. To find out what I was in for, I did what you're doing right now. I went to YouTube. But I found that most of the videos about the high-res mode are a couple of years old, and they don't mention a very important upgrade that came with firmware update 2.0 in November 2019. So for people who want to know more about high-res, I'll try to keep this quick, but I'll also try to be as comprehensive as possible. So, what is the high-res mode all about? Well, I guess it's one way that Panasonic addresses concerns some people have about the smaller size of the Micro Four Thirds sensor. In high-resolution mode, when you press the button, the camera doesn't take just one photo, it takes 8, each with a minute shift of the sensor. Then those 8 images are merged into one massive file of up to 80 megapixels instead of the usual 20. And you can do it in RAW or JPEG. This means you can present and print much larger photos than you would normally expect from a Micro Four Thirds sensor. Okay, that sounds great. Now how do we make it happen? Well, there's a bit to be set up, but it's all pretty quick and easy. Go to the first part of the menu and scroll all the way down to page 4 out of 5, and you'll find the high resolution heading. Press set or use the touchscreen to select. Now you have a bunch of options to choose from. I'll start with size and quality, but right now the picture size heading is greyed out. So I'll go straight to quality. You can choose between RAW, RAW plus JPEG, or JPEG. And it doesn't matter whether you're in RAW or JPEG for your regular shooting, you still have to make a selection for high resolution. If you select JPEG, you now have access to the picture size heading, and there you can choose between a large 40 megapixel file or the extra large 80. The info screen even tells you how many photos you can fit on the remaining space on your memory card. My preference is always to shoot RAW, so that's what I'll be doing for the rest of this demonstration. Next, you have the option to tell the camera to shoot a regular sized photo simultaneous with shooting your high-res image. This one's pretty straightforward. If you want to have a smaller version to go with each high-resolution file, you can, and if you don't, you can simply switch it off. Then you can choose a shutter delay option. Remember, the camera has to seamlessly merge 8 photos into one, so eliminating camera shake gives you the best chance of a perfect result. You have a surprising range of options from a fairly quick 1/8 of a second all the way up to 30 seconds, which I guess you could use if you wanted to insert yourself into the landscape. For my purposes, I'm going with a 4-second delay. Now the final choice has to do with motion blur, and this is where the 2019 firmware update kicks in. Think about it, if you take 8 photos of a moving subject, then it's going to appear in 8 different places, and you can expect that to show when the 8 photos are merged. This put a very serious limitation on how high-res mode could be applied. Option 2 is designed to eliminate that by showing your moving subject as a single image. In a few minutes I'll take a closer look at how well that works. But first let's get back to finishing the process. With all of your options selected, you're ready to start shooting. But before you do that, be sure to go back to the top of the high resolution menu and press start. Now you should see a new little symbol on the screen, which is the high resolution icon. And you can also see that the camera has switched to using the electronic shutter by default. Now I press the button and my 4-second delay kicks in. Then I can actually hear the 8 clicks of the electronic shutter. You have to wait for a few seconds of processing time and your high resolution shot is done. Now, if you want to keep shooting in high res, you don't have to go through the whole setup process again. Notice that after I take my photo, the icon is still on screen, meaning I can zoom, recompose, do whatever I want to be ready for my next shot, and then simply press for another high resolution image. So then how do we get out of high res mode? Well, don't worry, you don't have to go back into the menu, and there's a clue right there on the screen, telling us to click function 2 to end. When you press the function 2 button, the high-res icon disappears, and you can now return to shooting regular-sized images. So you've just seen me taking pictures of this mural, and because I was simultaneously shooting high-res and regular-sized images, as I mentioned before, we can now do a comparison. Let's see the difference when I open them up in Photoshop. Here's the regular version, and here's the high-res version. At first glance there doesn't seem to be much difference at all, but watch when I blow them up to 100% view. There's a very clear size difference between the regular and the high-res file, and that's confirmed when I look at the actual image dimensions. The high-res is 10,368 pixels wide compared to the usual 5,184, or if you're looking at an actual print size, that's close to 88 centimeters compared to the usual 44 centimeters. So you have a very clear difference in image size, and the high-resolution files will give you high-quality prints in much larger dimensions. And that's really what this is all about, making large prints or other applications where you really need to present the largest file possible. Because the truth is, you're not going to see a lot of benefit if you only show your photos on social media like Facebook, Flickr, or even here on YouTube. With this flower photo, you can see a very clear difference in size between the regular and the high-res versions. But when I reduce them both down to the size I use for my YouTube features, well, I like to think if I put my glasses on and I really squint, I can see a difference. But the truth is, there's not much difference to be seen. So if your photography is for social media purposes, then high-res mode is only going to chew up a stack of your storage without giving you much benefit. But if large-size printing is your ultimate goal, then there's no question that high-resolution mode is a great feature. Now I want to mention a couple of limitations that are specific to this function. The first is that the aperture range will be limited when shooting in high res. I saw somewhere that it doesn't allow you to go smaller than f8, although on my 12 to 60mm lens I was able to go as far as f11. So you will find there's a limitation, but you'll probably find it varies from lens to lens. It's also important to be aware that image stabilization is disabled in high res mode. So while the G9 features a world-class stabilizer system, you can't rely on it in this case. So it's pretty essential that you use a firm tripod, otherwise the camera is going to struggle to properly merge your 8 images into one. Finally, I want to take a closer look at that Motion Blur Mode 2 feature that came with the 2019 firmware update. For me this was a bit of a game changer, because without it you were pretty much limited to shooting subjects with zero movement. So architecture was fine as long as there were no people around. Flowers were okay as long as there was no breeze. As I mentioned, the upgrade was designed to freeze a moving subject so it didn't appear in 8 different places in the merged file. First, I tried it out at this street crossing, and it was easy to see that it does exactly what it's supposed to do. With the motion blur setting set to mode 1, the problem with any moving subject was plain to see. When I switched to mode 2, that problem was gone. So right away I'm impressed, but I did wonder if the feature only worked if most of the scene was stationary with just 1 or 2 moving objects. So I decided to really challenge the system with a scene that involved a lot more movement. Next I shot this beach scene, and to be honest I expected to be disappointed. You can see that in mode 1 there's movement everywhere, but when I switched to mode 2, using exactly the same settings, well, the results were beyond my expectations. So there you go. That's my look at the high resolution mode on the Panasonic G9. My verdict? Well, I think it's a great feature for anyone who wants to produce large prints or otherwise present their images in the largest possible format, but probably of limited value to people who only take photos for social media. If you haven't tried high resolution mode because of reviews you saw a couple of years ago, I strongly recommend you give it a try as long as you have your firmware updated, because that mode 2 is really a game changer. I think you'll be impressed. I'll be happy to see how other people feel about the high-res mode in the comments. So thanks for watching, and once again, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe before you go. I'm Andrew Goodall, this is Nature's Image Photography. Thanks for watching.